In the Miocene of Eurasia, a host of strange apes lived. These were the Ponginae. They were, or are, recognizable by the lack of a frontal sinus and some patterns of dental growth. Examples of pongines include Ouranopithecus, Ouranopithecus, and the best animal, which is shown here. From the runty Hispanopithecus laetanus to the massive Cevapithecus parvata, these apes had dominated the ape world in Asia and Europe for most of the Middle Miocene. The famed Gigantopithecus blacki, the largest primate to have ever lived, is currently believed to be more likely to be pongine than hominine. However, in Greece, China, and Asia Minor, 3 apes show up that don't fit the pongine bill, either due to their teeth or because they have a frontal sinus. In Greece, we have Gracopithecus, which has been suggested to be a distant relative of the chimpanzee and possibly even humans, though the latter claim is extremely dubious. In China, we have the strange Ouranopithecus, which proves arboreal apes have had special adaptations like hugely curved fingers for much longer than expected. And in Turkey and Macedonia, we have the biggest of these aberrations, a genus of ape called Ouranopithecus. Its skull was the size of a gorilla's. Bones from its hands and feet have also been recovered. The morphology of those hands and feet suggests this may have been the earliest ape that decided it would rather be on the ground than in the trees. Here is a quick sketch of Ouranopithecus in crouching posture. No, I don't know what fruit that is, I just drew it for artistic purposes. Soft tissues of the face and body are entirely speculative. Ouranopithecus represents an enigma. Though perhaps not as aberrant as apes such as the narrow-chested Cevapithecus, it doesn't seem to fit in with the other apes of the time period and locale. Its monkey-like face resembles those of the Dryopithecines, its forehead and wrists those of extant African apes. Furthermore, it was a massive creature, possibly as large as a gorilla. Their great bulk would have made climbing a pain in the neck, and paired with the shapes of the recovered hands and feet, suggests Ouranopithecus represents one of the first apes to be adapted for life on the ground. If Ouranopithecus was indeed terrestrial, it may have been palmagrade, a fist walker, or a knuckle walker. Aside from humans, the modern hominines use knuckle walking, so Ouranopithecus probably did too. While the climbing styles of modern orangutans is greatly deviated from the hominines such as chimpanzees and gorillas, there is still no indication that the subfamily of an ape determines its climbing style. Cevapithecus, a pongine, was probably an arboreal palmagrade quadruped that used suspension solely for feeding, while modern orangutans, also pongines, use suspension for more than a third of their movement. If pongines had this much diversity of climbing styles, then it stands to reason this applied to all great ape species. Fossils of extinct hominins such as Ardipithecus suggest heavy use of arboreal bipedalism, with the arms used as weight relievers, while the skeleton of the mysterious Ouranopithecus suggests heavy use of suspension. While all of these climbing styles are a possibility, without more elements of the skeleton of the Ouranopithecus, its climbing style would remain a mystery. Ouranopithecus's teeth were low and thick enameled, much like the Dryopithecines. Some researchers think this means Ouranopithecus must be a Dryopithecine, but the presence of the frontal sinus makes this unlikely. It does mean that Ouranopithecus would have been able to crush up hard foods like nuts and roots. However, this would have been just as well accomplished with larger but thinner enameled teeth like found in modern gorillas. Rather, judging from the Dryopithecines that lived near Ouranopithecus, it may have had to do with protection from a high-sugar diet. Of the 8 great apes today, all of them have an adaptation for long-term fat storage, and at least half of them, chimpanzees being an enigma, as their fat reserves are constantly cut short by their disproportionately high muscle mass, make excellent use of it. This is something a high-calorie, high-sugar diet complements well. Ouranopithecus may have stored fat for a dry season by eating ridiculous amounts of fallen fruit, something its large size would have enabled it to do where other, smaller apes could not. The skull of Ouranopithecus is comparable in size to that of a gorilla, and as such it probably had a similar intelligence. There is evidence of large amounts of sexual dimorphism in virtually every great ape from the Miocene except for the early hominins, so Ouranopithecus and most of the other Miocene apes would have had a society that resembled a gorilla. The exception would be the frontal pole of the brain, which has undergone substantial derivation in gorillas and would have been less specialized in Ouranopithecus and other Miocene apes. Ouranopithecus occurred at a very close time to African early hominines such as Mechalopithecus and Ouranopithecus. It may represent either one's taxonomic sister clade, having left Africa for the Middle East and Southeast Europe, and convergently evolved into a Dryopithecine-like face shape, which may have simply been the most efficient face shape for feeding in Miocene Europe. Alternatively, and perhaps most harmoniously, Ouranopithecus may represent a hybrid taxon between a migrating Megalopithecus, or Ouranopithecus, and a Dryopithecine. The subsequent taxon would have lasted long enough to become its own set of species. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll be hosting a poll as to what the next video will be about. Please vote. Oh, and if you're old enough, vote in this election too.